control. Welcome to another episode of the Silk and Steel podcast. I'm your host, Carl Zang. Today we have a very special guest, a returning guest, in fact, Xiangyu, all the way from the island of Taiwan, because recently there has been a Taiwan recall election that's barely covered on English language media, and I think it's important for us to get a perspective from someone on the ground. So first of all, welcome to my show, Xiangyu, again. And can you just do a very quick, brief introduction of yourself to my audience?
Hey, Carl, thank you very much for having me back. So as Carl said, my name is Xiangyu. I am the host of my own show called Straight Talk with Xiangyu, straight as in like the Taiwan Straight. And I am also a recording artist, specifically a rapper, and I guess a geopolitical commentator and analyst. And I got some other projects. One that's very dear to my heart, but I can't announce yet. But that will be like my main thing in the future. But yeah. And yeah, there was that mass recall recently. How much do you know about it?
Well, what I know is from X, from Twitter post, and a lot of it is from you actually. And I mean,
really?
I was aware there was a recall campaign by the ruling party of Taiwan, DPP. It was just basically an attempt to boot out the oppositions. Is it a recall of all opposition? All opposition MP members of the parliament, or just selected few?
Every single one that they were able to recall, because there's two types of legislatures. One is elected by people in different districts, right? But then there is another type called 不分区立委, or legislators at large, which means okay, so let's say you go and vote. You can vote for the legislature of your electoral district, right? But then there's another vote, which is the party vote. You vote for one of the parties on the ticket, whether it be like the DPP, the KMT, the TPP, or any of the other small parties. And then they count up all of the party votes, and then the allotted seats for those legislators at large are based on a percentage of the party votes. So that's why none of the TPP members, because there are eight legislators in the legislature from the third party. None of them got recalled because all of them are legislators at large. They weren't elected by districts. So yeah, and the thing about recalls is you need to petition, and once you get enough signatures, there's two conditions for a recall to go through. One is you need to have 25% of the constituency voting in favor of the recall. And two is the votes for the recall must be greater than the votes against the recall. So in the past,
so
I think
for my audience, I just like to break things down to basics. In case like people don't have any idea what's going on in Taiwan. So Taiwan right now, they have three parties. Traditionally they have a two-party system like United States, but now in more recent year they have three parties. In fact, because of the split in the opposition, the ruling party was able to win the last presidential election, where they barely garnered 40% of the elected votes. But because opposition was split, so even though there were 60% voted for the other parties, but it was evenly split between the other two parties, this is why DPP is in power. So my question for you, Xiangyu, is since DPP already won, they already have the presidency, why are they doing this? Why did they feel the need that they need to do this? Didn't they already win?
Well, because they don't have control of the legislature, right? Because most of the people in Taiwan are not pro DPP at this point. They lost the legislature. They have the DPP has 51 seats out of 113. The KMT has 52. There are two independents that are KMT leaning. So let's just count KMT as 54. 54 and 51 still don't meet the 57 required to get the majority. So the third party, the TPP, basically gets to break all of the ties. It may not be a lot of seats. This is why I think I disagree with people in America who say, oh, if you vote third party, then you're giving the vote to the candidate I don't like. because you can still have a majority, have a minority in the legislature, like let's say the House or the Senate, but still have a huge impact, right? Now, this all started when last year, so after the so-called presidential election, Lai Ching-te was elected, and then he was inaugurated, and the new legislature was, put into office, and then they needed to elect a speaker for the legislature. Now, this is done by vote, so of course, every single member of the DPP, so all 51, will vote for their guy, Ke Jianming. And the KMT put up their candidate, Han Guoyu. So with 54 versus 51, neither are majority. So the TPP had a choice. If they put up their own candidate and they vote for their own candidate, it's a symbolic vote saying, hey, we are independent. We're not bossed around by the KMT. We're not siding with the DPP. Or they could have voted DPP, or they could have voted KMT. But under 54 is greater than 51, and then with the 8 voting for their own candidate, the KMT speaker won and got the speaker of the legislature. So the legislature is essentially under KMT control. And see, in a normal liberal democracy, when you're faced with this situation, the right attitude is, okay, these members of legislature were elected by the people. They're representatives of the people, in theory. So we lost. We need to work for a better election next time. And in the meantime, we need to show the people that we are willing and able to deal with different opinions and work with them to, keep the government running. That sounds pretty reasonable, right?
I have another question. So,
yeah,
what for people who might not be well versed in the Taiwan politics, DPP is often portrayed as a pro-independence party, and then DPP like to portray KMT as a quote unquote pro-China party. How much is that true?
I think the KMT has figured out how to maintain a sort of a situationship with Beijing. It's undeniable that, they have roots on the mainland. A lot of the party members come from families that came from the mainland in 1949. So they're more connected with people on the mainland, and businessmen from Taiwan who do, business on the mainland tend to support the KMT. So of course they're going to push policies that are good for, cross-strait trade. Now, when it comes to reunification, I'd say they're a status quo party. They're not pushing for reunification. In fact, I would say the separatist rhetoric, like Lai Ching-te, the separatist rhetoric that he's pushing is actually speeding up the process of reunification, because when you're maintaining a situationship with Beijing, they're like, okay, we don't have much justification to speed things up. This is a workable relationship. Both sides uphold vaguely a one China policy that, the KMT will interpret in a different way when they're on their own little island, but it's enough that we can work with. Now, the DPP is just like, okay, we're not going to accept the 1992 consensus, which is both sides agree that there is one China. They will work for reunification. And essentially, the 1992 consensus means you say that, like, when you're working with the mainland, but then within Taiwan, you can say, oh yeah, by one China, we mean the Republic of China. It's enough of a gray area for both sides to kind of, it's a greatest common factor that people can work with. The DPP refuses to accept that. And I mean, a lot of it is just because of, they're not ideologically separatists in the sense that they're seriously pursuing it. Even if there are individuals within the party that want to pursue it, the U.S. isn't going to allow it. Taiwan separatist ideology is useful for the U.S. in the sense that it makes reunification difficult, but they're not going to want formal. The U.S. Every time a leader like Chen Shui-bian or Lai Ching-te has gotten too close to the line with their rhetoric, the U.S. will intervene and be like, "Hey, you gotta cut it out." Like in the days leading up to the recall vote which happened on July 26th, first time I've I've ever voted in Taiwan, by the way. Lai Ching-te was giving a series of speeches. It was called like the solidarity speeches, meant to I guess promote unity among the people of Taiwan, even though he's one of the most divisive leaders we've had in a while. But halfway through, after I think his fourth speech, the US stepped in and was like, basically like, yo, cut it out. We're trying to meet with Xi Jinping later this year. Anything you say, they're going to assume we allowed. So if you don't shut up.
Yeah, this is something I think a lot of people who outside of the Chinese speaking world don't realize. You know, the default assumption is because US is trying to stir up tension or stirring up a war with China, so that necessitate that they will push for Taiwan independence. That's not actually the case. What United States want is they want to maintain the tension, they want to stir up the tension, but they are not ready to start a war yet because they know that is a red line for mainland China. A formal declaration of Taiwan independence, that will be the red line. That will be the trigger for war. And that war will probably drag in the United States as well. So US is very careful not to, to push that button yet. And so people should understand that. This is why US also is trying to keep the separatist tendencies on check, within reasonable bounds. Is that what I said? That more or less?
More or less true. I would say another reason why they want to maintain a certain level of tensions is because it allows the administration here to fearmonger towards the people and justify U.S. weapon sales to Taiwan, spend like at least $1 billion every year. And these orders, when you order, it takes like 4 or 5 years for the equipment to arrive. It's overpriced and outdated. It benefits the U.S. Military industrial complex, and of course, certain U.S. politicians get kickback. So it's a really good grift that if you mess up the balance, if Taiwan becomes too pro Beijing, or if it goes towards a little bit too out of control with its separatist rhetoric, then this perfect arrangement is shattered. I would say for easier way to explain it, imagine the US being Michael Phelps. I mean, not Michael Phelps, Michael Vick. And the Taiwan separatists being his attack dogs. Michael Vick likes it when his dogs attack their intended targets and make him a lot of money. Michael Vick doesn't like it when his dogs run away and start attacking random people and get him in trouble. It's you see where I'm coming at. And with Taiwan separatists, the U.S. strategy is if Beijing isn't giving us the concessions we want, we loosen our grip on the leash just enough for Beijing to, just feel annoyed and maybe give some concessions. And then once they get the concessions and they want things under control, they start tightening the leash and telling, people like Lai Ching-te or Chen Shui-bian, yo, you got to cut it out. Biden wasn't really good with doing that, with his sending Nancy Pelosi over here and then doing that like military aid bill. He just his administration kind of
Yeah, I think Biden has by far the worst national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, and that guy was basically pushing the world toward World War III without even, I don't think that's his intention, but he's by pure incompetence. So now the internal Taiwan politics, the fight between DPP, KMT, TPP. Does United States even have a dog in that fight? I mean, does it matter to US which party wins out?
I think at this point the US has enough relations with the DPP that they won't say it officially. They'll be like, well, we have positive relations with all major parties. They put out excellent candidates. We will work with whoever is elected. But I think after all of these years, the US does have a preference towards the DPP because the DPP, you look at the way Lai Ching-te negotiates with America, he's like a simp, he's just like, oh, I'll give you everything you want. Now, please treat me good, daddy. And Donald Trump's just like, well, you give me everything I wanted anyways, even if I treat you like shit. So why should I treat you well?
Yeah, Donald Trump just slapped like what 100% tariff on semiconductor chips to United States, unless you also invest and build in US. Of course, I guess TSMC get an exemption because they're building the Arizona plant. But again, that's their plan is to hollow out Taiwan so they get TSMC to build in US. So somehow they lose Taiwan, they will still have TSMC plant in Arizona. But this is not.
This is why I think
the
DPP was so stupid.
Go ahead.
Because I think the DPP was so stupid because out of nowhere they were just like, okay, we're going to start building fabs in Arizona. Well, because this investment happened before these tariffs, now they don't count towards the investments in America. Now, if that didn't happen, and now they're like, okay, we want 400 billion in investments or whatever. What's 4,000 亿? 4,000 亿 is 400 billion, right?
400 million. Yeah.
400.
Oh, 千亿.
4,000 亿. 400 billion.
400 million is that's
400 million is
1,000. That's 1,000. Yeah. Damn.
Yeah. 4,000 亿is it's 400 billion. So it's like, okay, or 300 billion. Now, if
no, that's more. 400 million is 4亿, right? 4,000, you got to add another 30 to that. So what is that? That's damn it. I hate this conversion because in Chinese we do like increments of 4 zeros. But in English is you do it in thousands. So what is 1,000 of 100 million? So that's like 1,000 of a million is so 40 billion. 40 billion, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay, 40 billion. 40 that sounds about right. For 400 billion, I was like, that's a bit much. So he was like, now if TSMC built the plants now, then it'd just be like, okay, that counts towards it, but it doesn't work anymore. Now, internally, it started with, the legislative election for the speaker, the KMT won. So then as early as May or June of last year, the DPP, and of course they don't admit it. They're just like, oh, these are all just grassroots organizations, but they're all closely coordinated by certain key players that are very close to Lai Ching-te, such as Shen Boyang, Puma Shen, and Cao Xingcheng, Robert Cao. Robert Cao is like the sugar daddy of the DPP's wannabe Gestapo, essentially. Just like, well, not Gestapo, but like it's like their how do you say 侧翼 in English?
No idea.
It's like the useful idiots that they mobilize. The activists that they mobilize. Yeah. So they tried to. So of course, I mean, it's within the rights of an opposition party to, scrutinize the budget and make cuts, right? In any liberal democracy. Now, the DPP started saying, oh, they're slashing our budget because they're working for the Communist Party of China, and they're trying to make it easier for the Communist Party of China to infiltrate, invade, and take over Taiwan. Which is funny because even though it was a huge budget cut, the resulting budget in the end is still the largest budget Taiwan's ever had. And Lai Ching-te is all like, oh no, but see, we don't have enough money to even turn on AC in our offices. So it's like, okay, where did all the money go? But instead of, answering these sorts of questions, now they're just doubling down and calling everybody who doesn't support the DPP a fellow traveler of the CPC.
I mean, they're like the kids who cry wolves. I mean, recently, for people who don't know, the Taiwan quote unquote defense minister or foreign minister, whichever, was speaking to Sky News, and they told Sky News that China is prepared to invade Taiwan. And when Sky News reported it, and when other big X account tried to quote Sky News, they painted as like there's an imminent Chinese invasion of Taiwan. So I had to go on. I had to debunk it on X. I said, look, if there's a Chinese operation imminent about to take place on Taiwan, Chinese people will be the first to discuss amongst ourselves, right? If there's no talks about this among Chinese people, it's only English language media, it's 100% psyops.
It's like when they have quotes of Xi Jinping and you search like the keywords in Chinese and it doesn't show up, then it's a fake quote. Like, it doesn't matter if it's
Oh
pro
yeah,
or
I mean,
anti-China. It happens on all sides.
yeah. People are just doing this for engagement right now.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
they the engagement farming, because that can net some money from some some engagement bucks from Elon Musk. But this is why I have you here, because you are actually in Taiwan, Xiangyu. You can give us a better view from the ground up. So in this is this why do you think it is that there's very little English language coverage of this recall election in Taiwan? Because this is actually pretty big news on Taiwan, right? I mean, a lot of the parties, their base are energized, or they're getting mobilized, and there's like large scale protest in Taiwan. But almost the only thing I read about this whole process in Taiwan is from X post. If it wasn't for like people like you who post this about Taiwan, I wouldn't even know this was going on. Why do you think that is?
Well, the thing is, there is no lack of foreign reporters in Taiwan, especially after the events of 2019 in Hong Kong. A lot of the foreign reporters that used to be based on the Chinese mainland or in Hong Kong relocated to Taiwan out of, I guess, fear for their personal safety or whatever their excuses. And but the thing is, interestingly, they only report news that makes the DPP look good. So when the DPP mobilizes a protest against the KMT that's like attended by a few thousand people, it's big news. But then when there's a TPP event, like rally of like 100,000 people, you hear from a nobody like me, and you don't hear it on the news. Isn't that weird? I mean, I'm not saying Taiwan is so important, but if like some small scale protest gets on the international news, but a large 100,000 rally doesn't get reported, something is wrong, right? Because if 100,000 people gathered in Beijing, it will be all over the news every day for 2 weeks at least.
Yep.
And it's because the U.S., I feel, wants Lai Ching-te they want to prop Lai Ching-te up as like this brave defender of Taiwan and democracy. And this sort of news would poke a hole in that image because it shows, okay, he's doing all of that, but a lot of the people in Taiwan feel like their needs aren't being met. And I'm really glad all of this happened because Lai Ching-te made like mistake after mistake. During right before the mass recalls, there was a typhoon. It wasn't a big typhoon, but certain places in southern Taiwan, like in Tainan and Jiayi, certain areas got hit pretty hard, got their roofs blown off. And let's face it, if you're living in a house that could get its roof blown off that easily, chances are you're not rich, right? And it was in rural Tainan, so it's a bunch of elderly people whose children, grandchildren are probably out in the cities working. And Lai Ching-te is a very single track minded person, like tunnel vision. Like, I'm not saying this to be mean. I do think he has very autistic tendencies. I'm not saying this to be funny, because if you look at the way he does politics, ever since he was mayor of Tainan, it's always either gets his way or he fusses. And it's just like it seems like nobody's ever corrected him on this and socialized him to, you know, overcome this personality flaw of his, which I think with this personality, it will make him a good advisor to a real leader. But him as a leader, him in the steering wheel, it's a pretty bad idea. Well, you know, the leader of any government in these sorts of big natural disasters, they're supposed to go and show that they care and listen to the people, especially electoral politics. If you're trying to get people of members of your party reelected. Now, Tainan is a very pro DPP area, so I think in his mind he thinks, oh, whatever, I can treat them like shit, they'll still vote for my party. So there are these people. They were like, hey, there's a lot of debris, there's a lot of damage. Could you please send in the troops to help clear the debris and help us get our lives back in order? And he just straight up said, all he had to say was, I will look into it with the defense ministry and the city government of Tainan. No, instead of saying that, he's like, well, you can't always rely on the army because the military is busy and they have things to do. You need to build up strong community support. Only with strong community support can we overcome difficulties. And then he's like, oh, also ever since the end of martial law, soldiers aren't allowed into civilian homes, which, I am not allowed into any civilian home unless I'm invited. That's called trespassing. That's the case with after martial law, soldiers can't enter civilian homes uninvited. But in a situation where it's, helping, where it's disaster relief, most people would allow them in to help. And if an individual doesn't want soldiers into his house to help, that's less work for them. I don't see why they would say no to that. And he told them, hey, I gave you guys tarp. You need to climb up on your roofs yourself and put on the cover up your houses yourself. And I mean, if you were that resident that got talked to like that, wouldn't you feel like he just told you fuck you and your ancestors and everybody in your house?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, and it's shocking because Tainan is actually a DPP stronghold, right? I mean, that's where Lai Ching-te himself served as a mayor for a while, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like the fact that he would just give a big FU to his electoral base, that's pretty shocking, actually.
I think Tainan might flip next year. They might go from DPP to KMT for the first time ever since the turn of the century.
Wow.
Because the candidate that the KMT is putting up, Xie Longjie, is actually a pretty strong candidate. Yeah, he's Oh, and then what's really sad is after he said that, or before or after, it was around the same time, this elderly man did climb on his own roof to put on a tarp, and he fell to his death.
Oh shit!
And then there was also this woman, because some of these areas were out of power for a while, so this elderly woman.
That's sad, man. I mean, like,
yeah.
But in that regard, Taiwan is not that different from United States, right? Because we saw that during Hurricane Katrina, right? I mean, I mean, U.S. government, they only send. They don't send their National Guard or the military to help people.
George Bush does not care about black people.
Property. Well, we know that. I mean, and I think that I do need to point out that is a sharp contrast to what's going on mainland China. Whenever there's a large scale disaster on mainland China, like either the Sichuan earthquake back in 2008, or even more recent flooding in Beijing, China will mobilize their military. That's what, like, people kind of expect that. People kind of expect when a large disaster strikes, the government will mobilize the military to help, and that they expect that to be the duty of the military, because otherwise,
actually, that's expected here too. It's happened in the past. Every time, for the most part, when Lai Ching-te was mayor of Tainan, it's happened. Like, the military most of the time gets mobilized. Eventually, yes, the military was mobilized this time, but did he have to say all that? I mean, you know why he said that, right? Because he's very single track minded. All he was thinking about was the mass recall, and 2, the Hanguang military drills. Because he got the Hanguang military drill. It was this time. There's a lot of urban warfare training.
I want to ask you about that, because for people who don't know, Hanguang military drill is this like kind of annual military exercise conducted by Taiwan military. But the most recent one, it was in the news because that apparently was the largest exercise ever conducted, and of course it was aimed toward mainland China. Do you think there's any significance of it being the largest exercise conducted in the recent years?
In the budget, urban warfare wasn't planned, so they had to pass a special budget for the urban warfare segment of the Hanguang military drill. And this time, when the Hanguang military drill was happening, members of the AIT, the American Institute in Taiwan, which is the de facto embassy where there's definitely no CIA, right? Had their people, monitoring it, and they had U.S. military experts. So it was very clear that this was something pushed for by the U.S. The U.S. wanted to see the readiness for urban warfare. Oh, and during the Hanguang military drill, it was like disaster after disaster, like a not a tank. It was like a military vehicle like crashed into a civilian, like wrecked a few like civilian vehicles, and there were like injuries. There were all sorts of. I mean, it kind of showed that preparation is kind of a joke over here. I did see some posts on Facebook of some of my friends. They were they're not 36 yet, so they're still called for refresher training sometimes. And
okay,
some of them
so
called.
after you're 36, you don't have to be answerable to the conscription service, right?
After December 31st of the year you turn 36.
Okay.
Yeah, so a few of them got called to take part in this Hangguang military training because they're all like, a lot of them were reservists, and then they were all complaining online like, this military drill was a lot more difficult than actual military service we did, which it's kind of concerning. If your military service is a joke, then you shouldn't be, warmongering, is all I'm saying.
Well, that's one thing that U.S. complain a lot publicly about Taiwan is, right. It's the complaint about Taiwan's military readiness. Taiwan has not plowed enough of its GDP toward defense, and Taiwan is not serious. I mean, they've been harping on that for like few years now, right? I mean, like, but I think they just don't realize, even hardcore separatists like the quote unquote President Lai Ching-te, they don't actually expect to fight themselves. That they expect United States to send in the Americans to die and bleed for their independence. So I mean, why spend doing all this, go through all this effort to prepare? But I think
so. To him,
go ahead.
So to him, he looked at these military drills as like a sort of exam that the U.S. was giving him. So that's why he was so concerned about it. He wanted to get it over with. So that was all he was thinking about. That's why he told the civilians, like, basically, fuck you. And
yeah,
I mean, it was just disaster after disaster. I mean, like, during the mass recall, the DPP has done nothing this year except focus on the mass recall. So from January until now, like August, there's a second round of recalls on the 23rd because some of the districts, they couldn't get enough signatories on the petitions until later. So those are on the 23rd, but they're not going to pass either.
Let me ask another question. So one of the premise for a DPP recall is they're labeling all these other members of parliament from the opposition party as Chinese communist spies or collaborators, right?
It's what Yoon Suk-yeol did in South Korea. He called his entire opposition like puppets of Kim Jong-un.
Exactly. Well, and that goes to the DPP, the Taiwan ruling party. Actually, I think they were sending praises to President Yoon in the immediate aftermath of the coup. Before
they deleted it 20 minutes after, because everybody started dogpiling them, so they deleted the comment, and they were just like, and they just acted like it never happened, but not before it got screenshotted.
But so this leads me to my question. If they're still try to frame everyone as communist sympathizers that must be rooted out. Now, again, I'm just saying this for the benefit of my audience who may not be familiar with Taiwan. Is there a widespread public sentiment on Taiwan that's scared of that imminent invasion from mainland China? Do you get that sense that people are scared of a coming invasion anytime soon?
This is like asking a South Korean in Seoul if they're scared of an imminent invasion coming from the north. It's just no. People are living their lives, and I think most people on the ground know that the DPP is fearmongering, and they're just more and more people are waking up. A lot of people who voted against the recall, they were former DPP supporters, disgusted by the DPP's lies. I mean, the DPP, they're a bunch of millennials at this point, and they're trying to lie to Zoomers about the Chinese mainland, making it all dystopian and scary and just fear-mongering. But now more and more people are seeing the truth. I mean, the thing is, between Taiwan and the Chinese mainland, there is no linguistic or cultural barrier. It's not like in the US where there is quite a big barrier, so it is more difficult to penetrate. They're seeing through the lies, and I mean, let's put it this way: if we were never friends and you just hated me from day one, your hate towards me is probably just here. But if we were friends and then one day you felt like I betrayed you, your hate towards me would be over here.
Oh yeah, because that's betrayal. That's betrayal. Yeah.
I noticed. I go to some TPP events, like these anti-recall events, and I can just tell by the like the mannerisms of certain people, whether they're like more pro KMT or like former pro DPP. Most of them are pro DPP, and it's really obvious. I see. I never really hated the DPP. I just always thought they were a bunch of phonies and just wanted to expose them. And I've just found it amusing. These people actually hate the DPP. They feel like the DPP like went to their house and like stabbed their mothers and kicked their dogs. That's what they're like. It's So yeah, there is that mass sentiment, but have you noticed after the recall, certain people like Brian Hyo just ended up in cope mode.
But by the way, we should let people know the recall failed.
Oh, right,
the
right.
recall was a complete fiasco.
No, but you know what's scary? I talked to some of my pro DPP friends, and they were like, "Oh yeah, no, that it's definitely going to be a great success. We're gonna recall at least 7 of them. 7's like the amount they need to possibly get the majority, because after you recall, you need to re-elect new people to fill in their spots, and there's no guarantee that the new people will be DPP. So they were aiming for at least 10." And then one of my friends was like, "Oh, the magistrate of the legislator from Hualien will definitely be recalled, Fu Kunqi." And I was like, "What makes you think that?" And he was like, "Oh, because my friend runs a clothing shop over there, and some of his policies, they're just not really in the market, and blah 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 blah." And I was like, "Okay, listen, I'm not dismissing your friend's complaints about his policies or him feeling like he's gotten the short end of the stick because of certain policies, but are there more rice farmers in Hualien or clothing store owners?" I asked him that, and then he just kind of fell silent, because I realized these DPP activists, their social circles are like, I saw a post by Brian Hyo. He was all like, "Oh, but we had these art workers, we had these directors, we had authors, and blah 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 blah." And I'm just like, dude, most people in Taiwan, like, yes, we all consume art, we like to watch movies, we like to listen to music, but the average person's concerns aren't the same concerns of people who can survive off of doing art. Let's just face it.
Do you think Brian Hyo is sponsored by the NED, by the USAID money?
I don't know. I know he did work for the Taiwan Foundation for Democracy, and they were NED adjacent. So I mean, it's within that network. I don't think he's important enough.
He somehow gets quoted in like the media channels, in English language media channels, as like progressive Taiwanese voice from the left.
No, but you know what's funny is after this past recall and like how that side got slapped in the face, I think the West, like these people's handlers, are starting to realize, wait, these people aren't that reliable sources of information, because I think they had this thing where they're pressured to paint a different story from reality, because they also serve another function, which is the DPP can point to them and say, "Oh, look, foreign media speaks of us positively. That means we're doing a good job." So a lot of times, foreign, like English language media in Taiwan isn't even really meant for Western consumption. It's meant for the DPP to use to brag about themselves.
This reminds me. By the way, this kind of reminds me of during the Cold War, the CIA would try to gather info. Hong Kong was a battlefront. During the Cold War, so there were a lot of CIAs. They were trying to glean information coming out of mainland by hiring these Chinese to gather news from mainland for them. To aggregate the news from mainland for them, and pretty soon these native informers figure out what their CIA handle like to hear, so they start to make up their own shit and feed it to the CIA handler. So they have like completely the CIA have a completely wrong idea about what was actually going on in China. That just kind of reminded me of what you said about Brian Hyo.
A lot of illegal Chinese immigrants in America, they want to get green cards, and one way is to claim political asylum. and to claim political asylum, you have to make up a lot of shit about the Communist Party of China. That's why sometimes you see like these Falun Gong people, like these, and you see like these people making up all these stories about how they got their like left testicle like dug out personally by Xi Jinping to feed to I don't know Jiang Zemin or some of these ridiculous type stories.
But hey, Falun Gong, their media empire, Epoch Times, now is one of the most successful right-wing publications in United States and in the West. And I would say Epoch Times is probably the most successful Chinese propaganda. But except they're not Chinese propaganda by the Chinese state. They're the Chinese propaganda funded by the U.S. money. and you know their original intended audience, of course, they were trying to subvert you know, like the to undermine the legitimacy of PRC. But what ended up happening is they're very successful at propagandizing Americans and Europeans, and so now they are like a beast, a beast on the right wing circles. You know, to propagandize more Americans and more Europeans, and they're far more effective at that than, you know, ever undermining the legitimacies of the PRC. But anyway, sorry,
what if Xinhua just acquires Epoch Times?
Oh man, but they do very well on YouTube. You know, like China Uncensored, and there was a David Zang channel. Like they get way more views than I do. You know, they have like millions and hundreds of thousands.
Wait, is David Zhang the guy whose eyes are farther apart than Heilongjiang in Xinjiang?
I don't watch enough of his videos to really pay attention, but you know, they get way more views than I do. They get like hundreds of thousands of views per video. I mean, you know, somehow they're getting promoted by the platform. Maybe I don't know. But anyway, so back to Taiwan.
Right. So where were we? The recall failed, but throughout all of this time, I think
did they recall any candidate? Did they end up recall any?
Every single one failed. I thought they would get at least one, and then like, okay, I went to vote on the 27th. I go home. The vote count started at 4 p.m. By 4:30 p.m. I was like, okay, none of them are gonna get recalled. It was that sad, and I think this is the thing with.
By the way, when that happened, I saw. You know, of course, on my YouTube recommendation list, I get recommended France 24, which says the Taiwan's attempt to oust pro-China MP failed. Right? I mean, like this is what they were literally adopting the DPP line, saying these opposition candidates are pro-China, and that's why they're attempting to get recalled them. But then they have to word it in a way. It's like, oh, the Taiwan voter rejects pro-China MP recall. But it's I mean, anyway, they're really kind of twisting a pretzel, trying to word it in a way to so you don't realize there's actually a strong opposition to the current ruling party on Taiwan, or that what they're doing is actually really shady. This is actually they're trying to suppress. They are trying to suppress dissent. They're trying to suppress opposition party, which is like totally opposite of democracy. But anyway, so go ahead. Sorry.
There were some, I want to get into some Freudian slips by that side. But before we get into that, I want to talk about the whole pro-China claim. So after I released my latest music video, which was about Lai Ching-te and all that, I guess in a way, the timing of the music video, I did want to encourage people to vote against the recalls. But around the time the music video came out was like 2 weeks before the recall vote, and of course the TPP and the KMT were, you know, doing their rallies to get people to come out and vote, because it's very difficult to get people to come out and vote like against recalls, because most people, either you're just very pro whoever is launching the recall and you vote, or you don't care and you just in the past when recalls failed, it was usually because most people who were against the recalls just didn't care enough to go vote, right? But it became concerning because this time, like, Ke Jianming, the minority speaker of the DPP, straight up said that he wanted to restore the Article 100 of the Criminal Code, which was the law that the KMT used back during martial law to justify the arrest of dissenters. Now, in the past, the law never got totally abolished, but it got reworded so that you have to act upon your desire or your plans to subvert the state in order to get arrested. In the past, it was just if you've expressed the desire, you just got arrested. He wanted to subvert that. So of course people were very scared because it's like, okay, who gets to decide what is and isn't plotting subversion? Because we've seen with the arrest of Ko Wen-je, the founding chairman of the TPP, the third party, he's been locked up for almost a year now, and he still hasn't been tried. But the thing is, he's facing corruption charges, accepting bribes, but they found zero cash flow. If you find zero cash flow and none of the cash, you don't have enough evidence to make a case, but they're still having him locked up and detained. And he was a former candidate for, the so-called president. Imagine the amount of outrage that would happen in the US if either candidate, of a previous election just got thrown into jail on charges without proof. Right. So it's very clear that the trajectory of the DPP is they want to become a single party state. They were pro-democracy when they were, when they were at a disadvantage against the DPP, the KMT. But now that, they've enjoyed 8 years under Tsai Ing-wen as, the majority of the legislature and also having control of the executive branch, they wanted to continue that because Lai Ching-te is more ambitious. In fact, Lai Ching-te and Tsai Ing-wen are from different factions of the DPP. So I don't know if you noticed, but there's been a pretty huge qualitative shift in the DPP I want to get into later. But about the KMT being pro-China with those rallies, they actually reached out to me asking if I wanted to perform at at one of their anti-recall rallies in Keelung. And I was like, yeah, of course. Because then there were some people I like were gonna be there, like Xie Longjie, the possibly future mayor of Tainan. I've always liked that dude. Thought it'd be cool to meet him. And the speaker, the KMT legislative speaker would also be there, Han Guoyu. I thought, he's a funny guy. I find his speeches entertaining. But then they looked at my social media and they were like, wait, you're pro-communist. And they were like, okay, we respect your right to have your own opinion, but it would be very inconvenient for us if we had you at one of our events because the DPP is always claiming that we're proxies of the CPC and you are straight up what they say we are. So
you're the smoking gun.
I was like, hey, I don't want to cause any inconveniences. If you find that I'm ill-suited for your event, I understand. I won't hold it against you. I just thought it was really funny. So yeah, I was invited to. At first, I was kind of invited, but then they looked into me. They did a little background check, and they were like, "Nope, this guy's actually
communist."
Yeah, that happened.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, one of the influencers that the DPP that was basically under DPP payroll, his name was Ba Zhong. He straight up said on media, if the mass recalls fail, then how will Lai Ching-te be able to declare martial law if we ever need to?
Well, he's the one that put the Nazis' ego symbol everywhere on the campaign, right? That was
on one event on April 19th. So what happened was recently some of these pro-recall activists, I mean, let's put it this way. When they joined the recall movement during a time when the DPP was faltering in popularity, it's like becoming a eunuch in 1911. You're a little boy from a poor family. You decide to join the imperial court you chop off your balls, become a eunuch. But then come October 10th, the Qing dynasty falls and you're there without your nuts. So, I mean, there's splits among them now. And one of his Ba Zhong's former buddies, Minan Wolf, came out and just was like, hey, there's something I need to tell everyone. I am distancing myself from Bajong because, and then he posts the chats that they had. There was this one event where like the banner behind them was like this very Nazi looking eagle in front of a
very sus,
Taiwan.
very sus. Yeah,
it looked very Nazi at the time, and I was like, yeah, this looks very Nazi.
Scheme, the whole image and the color scheme is very certain right. Yeah,
but it's like I don't have proof that it was inspired by Nazis, so I was like, okay, I won't say anything because people like, I don't know, Brian Hill might be like, oh, he's wearing a tinfoil hat, he's a Nazi while he supports the CCP and they're the actual China Nazis. But then like according to these leaked chats, Bajong was telling his buddy Minanlang, hey, you know what this eagle is? And Minanlang was basically like, no, and he posted a bunch of pictures of these Nazi eagles, and he was like, this is what it is. I've been studying Nazi ideology for a long time, and I've realized nobody has been more anti-communist than them, which is correct. So we need to learn from them. We need to come up with our own gestures, and we need to turn a certain segment of Taiwan's population into our Jews so that we can mobilize hatred against them. And like what he wants to do is mobilize hatred against people who are either not on board with the DPP or self-identify as Chinese.
By the way, for my audience, the reason I'm laughing so hard is because this a whole Nazi thing in Taiwan, it's just LARP. It's just LARP. It's just aesthetics. You know, these guys are so freaking dumb, and they just think, oh, Nazi symbol looks so cool, we can adopt that for our own use. I mean, they're so freaking stupid. This is why I'm laughing. I'm laughing at this whole stupidity thing. But go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I thought it was really funny too. And Minanlang, no, because after the failed recall, Cao Xingcheng, the sugar daddy behind the recall movement, who was born in Beijing, by the way, born in Beijing in 1946 or 47, and
was it because his parents were working in Beijing at the time, or they were like Taiwan businessmen or something?
And he was he was born in 1947. It was before 1949.
Wait, 1947?
Yeah, he's an old man. And he's a sugar daddy behind Nai Qingde's thing. See, this is what I feel. Cao Xingcheng used to do business on the mainland, and I feel like he got the short end of the stick somehow. So now he's turning against the CPC, and he's joining Lai Qingde's team. But this guy's always been really iffy because in the past he gave up his citizenship here and became a Singaporean citizen and lived there. And then now it's like, oh, he wants to cozy up with Lai Qingde, so he reclaims his citizenship. And it's funny because he's in bed with these Taiwan separatists politically, but physically in bed, he's been caught with mistresses from the Chinese mainland, or at least one mistress. Like photos were leaked. He's like, he's got her over here. She's like smiling. He's like smoking a cigarette. Like
separatists in the streets,
reunification in the sheets. And Minanlang is a funny story. In the past, he was one of those like model Taiwan compatriots living on the mainland, doing like propaganda for them. Like what's that cringe ass song? Like Hong Zhen Zhen Yu Zhen Zhen Lai Hu Zhen Zhen Hu Zhen Zhen. Like
I have no idea, man.
It's about Fu Jian Jian, and he's like rapping in like a very Fu Jian accent.
Got it.
And but then he and his team had some sort of disagreements over, because a lot of his works on the mainland were team efforts. There was disagreement over pay. They went to court. He lost. He ended up owing a bunch of money on the mainland. I think he had a bunch of debts on the mainland. So he comes back to Taiwan and he starts making a bunch of anti-CPC content, trying to cozy up with the DPP. And yeah, he ends up becoming friends with Bajong. And I feel like Bajong kind of sold him this dream saying, hey, if you do this, you'll get a lot of money. Because here's the thing. Cao Xingcheng, the sugar daddy behind the mass recall movement, he's on the executive board of the 文总 中华文化总会 in Taiwan. What is the 文总? What is it in English? Hold on, let me
Chinese
search it up real quick.
Culture Association.
Chinese Association of Arts and Culture, which is basically like, it's not directly like government, it's kind of like NGO, but it was started by Chiang Kai-shek in the past to counter the Cultural Revolution. And then it just became tradition that whoever was the so-called president was also the leader of Wenzhong, and they have their resources. And then they also sponsor local artists and whatever. And now with Lai Ching-te in charge, he put like all of his little cronies up on the executive board and just started using that as a way to funnel money into the recall movement and do their campaigns and stuff. So to say that no government money or taxpayer dollars were spent on this recall act is just quite ridiculous. I mean, recalls, it should be, focused on individuals, like an individual legislator. Individual legislator is failing his duties and or committed some crime or whatever.
This will be equivalent of Trump using using the American government money to fund campaign to oust like
every single Democrat senator and representative. Yeah, and also another thing is there is this one rapper from Tainan. His name is Duaki Dazhi. He's for many years he's received funding from the local Tainan government. Back when Lai Ching-te was mayor, they've been friends for over a decade. So the cultural office of the Tainan city government used to sponsor him, and I guess every year he would apply for grants. But now Lai Ching-te is leader. He just straight up put this rapper on the executive board of the the General Association of Chinese Culture. Which is funny how they're doing separatist stuff under an organization called the General Association of Chinese Culture. Yeah, and recently there's been quite a scandal because just a few days before the vote, he posted a music video that was funded by the government. It wasn't just the General Association for Chinese Culture. It was also the straight up the Ministry of Culture that also sponsored the video. And the music video is very clearly like in favor of the Great Recall. And it was this whole song was just attacking the opposition and calling them a bunch of communist bandits, like Gongfei, Gonghui. And so people were upset, saying you're spending our government tax dollars doing partisan politics on behalf of Lai Ching-te. So that's the state of Taiwan politics today, man. I don't know what to tell you. It's but it's funny. What makes me happy is they're doing all of this. I think they've overstepped their boundaries and they're getting a huge slap in the face. I remember last year when Lai Ching-te was first elected, you had me on to talk about the implications of his leadership on Taiwan. And I said it was going to be, not much is going to change. And I think I was correct, but I underestimated the clown show that would ensue. I was optimistic because I said, hey, he won the leadership, but he doesn't have majority of the legislature. And because of his personality, there's going to be some tension. I knew that. I just didn't know it would play out this way and be so entertaining. And it's gone to the point where people who were once sympathetic are rethinking. And I think for the first time in Taiwan, you can go out and just say, I am Chinese, and not really worry about like hardline DPP supporters giving you shit, because now it's like at least 60% of society hates them now. And after this recall act, they hate them even more because it wasn't just political. These recall groups that were like campaigning outside in like all of our cities, like outside of grocery stores, trying to get people to petition. They would harass people, man. There were there's been videos of these old Chinese Civil War veterans who were, Civil War veterans. They're from the mainland, and these DPP activists are shouting at them, telling them to like get out of Taiwan, go back to China.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's like, well, you say your movement is anti-communist, but these old soldiers actually were on the battlefield, like fighting communists. So it's like,
wow. Yeah.
So that's the kind of the kind of the rundown. I know there's a lot of little. Is there any detail that you feel needs clarification, or you want to?
I think that's pretty good. But I mean, what's your, looking into a crystal ball? What do you see the next 5 years? How is that going to play out for the rest of the Lai Ching-de's presidency, given the failure of the recall?
See, here's the thing. Usually, you wait like 2 years. So like the president, so-called president's elected, and then 2 years later, there's a mayoral and magistrate elections. And the mayoral and magistrate elections is kind of like a midterm exam to see how your administration is doing. What Lai Ching-te did was he was like, no, I don't want to wait 2 years. I want to just do the mass recall. So the mass recall was kind of like, okay, you want a midterm exam early? Fine, we'll give it to you. And I think he's a very bad gambler. And now at this point, within the party, there's going to be splits. Because remember, Lai Ching-te and Tsai Ing-wen aren't from the same faction. In fact, when Tsai Ing-wen was running for re-election, Lai Ching-te tried to challenge her because she wasn't separatist enough. But then what Tsai Ing-wen ended up doing was offer him the so-called vice presidency, so he would end up being a bench player. Right, that was their way of smoothing. That was like the power dynamic inside the party. You remember the whole scandal about her fake doctoral thesis?
Yeah,
that didn't come from the KMT. That came from like separatist hardliners who were unhappy with Tsai Ing-wen not being separatist enough.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Tsai Ing-wen, of course, she's not separatist. She was KMT. She wasn't just a political opportunist, right? I mean,
she wasn't KMT, but she worked within the KMT bureaucracy.
Right. Yeah.
And then she didn't join the party until after Chen Shui-bian became leader, and she joined the party so that she could become a legislator under his nomination. Yeah. So that's how it happened. I think there's going to be a lot of not purges, but there's going to be more splits within the party. They're going to be more apparent. Now,
I do want. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
I think a normal person by DPP standards was such an embarrassing failure. He would step down as the chairman of the DPP. I mean, he would still serve as so-called president, but step down as the chairman of the DPP, right? And also, he would do kind of reorganize his cabinet, get rid of his premier Zhou Rongtai, just set up a new cabinet that's more maybe tripartisan as a gesture to the people saying, hey, I fucked up. Our society is very split. Let's try to mend the wounds and restore the solidarity within our society. Now, he's not doing that. I think what will happen, though, is next year when the mayoral and magistrate elections come up, the DPP is not going to do well. I think what happened was, remember in 2024, the TPP and KMT failed to reach a consensus, and that's why they ran on separate tickets, allowing Lai Ching-te to win. I think this whole episode, it forced the KMT and TPP to work together more closely than ever before. Voices within the TPP that were against working closely with the KMT are now being sidelined. So I think for next year's mayoral election, what they're going to do is the KMT and TPP will coordinate with one another. In Tainan, okay, you, Xie Rongjie, KMT, you're a strong candidate. We won't put up a candidate in Tainan, so we won't split it three ways. It'll be Xie Rongjie and the DPP's guy, which is probably going to be Lin Junxian. Now, in another city, the KMT, you don't have a strong candidate, but we have a candidate that's very popular in this county or this city. So KMT, you don't put up a candidate, we'll run and you'll rally behind us and we'll throw our support behind your candidates in some of the other cities. I think that's going to happen. And I think in 2028, I think Lai Ching-te will be the first leader of Taiwan to only serve a single term. I really think that.
Okay, so I do want to ask one more question. Recently there was a internet influencer, the gym boss guy. You know what I'm talking about? Guan Zang, the gym boss guy. So he used to be like a hardcore, anti-communist, anti-mainland, and influencer. I mean, like and then but he did had a change of heart very recently, and he actually went to visit mainland China, and then he was saying, "Oh yeah, we have been misled by anti-mainland propaganda for all this time," and he has a very strong things to say about the current Taiwan government. Is he just an isolated example, or do you think there's actually some kind of shift going on?
There's definitely a shift going on. I think most people in Taiwan, like younger people, aren't ready to be like him and say, "Oh no, we should reunify." But I think most people are at least shifting towards, "Hey, we need reconciliation. This current trajectory we're on, it's not good for either side, but it's especially not good for us." I think the turning point for Guan Zhang was he actually supported Han Kuo-yu's mayoral election in Kaohsiung. So he's always been kind of a middle ground guy. He threw his support behind. He was for Tsai Ing-wen. I guess some of the fearmongering that went on around that time got to him, which I don't blame him. But then in 2024, he supported Ko Wen-je, the founding chairman of the Taiwan People's Party, the TPP, the third party, the influential third party. And when he started supporting Ko Wen-je, a lot of DPP supporters saw that as a betrayal. That's how crazy the DPPs become. They can't even have it's become so polarized that the people who are still supporting the DPP, many of them can't have a civilized conversation with you without like getting upset or whatever. I mean, I have a few of them, few friends that are DPP, but they're not pro DPP, but more like, well, I don't like the KMT and I don't trust the TPP. There are those types. Now, I think with Guan Zhang's with Ko Wen-je's political persecution, Guan Zhang was now like, okay, now I really hate the DPP. And by coming out against the DPP, all these DPP supporters are like, oh, see, you're a communist bandit. You're a gongfei. You're a Zhongkong Tongguren. You're a fellow traveler of the CPC. You're this. You're that. You're a Chinese pig. So he's like, okay, well, if that's the case, you know what? I've never been to the mainland anymore, ever. Why don't I go and see what it's like? So then he goes there and he sees a bunch of people just treating him with great hospitality. And you'll notice even before his trip, he used to say China and Taiwan, even like when he was starting to have a change of heart. But now after the trip, he's just saying Taiwan and the mainland. And like on his show, on his live stream, he's like saying, you know, we shouldn't have to apologize for our identity. I am Chinese. There is nothing wrong with that. I am Chinese. The 1.4 billion compatriots on the mainland are family. Blah 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 blah. I mean, part of it is because his business in Taiwan has been faltering because of politics. A lot of people have been getting rid of their gym memberships at his Genghis Khan gym. He kind of does look like his face does kind of look like Genghis Khan, by the way. So he wants to expand onto the mainland. You can't be a Taiwan separatist, like an open Taiwan separatist, like loudmouth, and do business on the mainland. So there is that factor. But I do think most people who believe in the hysteria are people who haven't gone to the Chinese mainland in recent years. They might have gone as children back in the 2000s, but as somebody, I traveled to the mainland the first time in 2005, and then I went again in 2007, and I saw
completely different.
But even back then, I saw that it was headed in the right direction. I just didn't expect it to be this fast.
Yeah.
But like going to like back then, like we took the slow night train from Beijing to Suzhou, and the site at the train station back in 2005, it was like it seemed like Taonan, like just that's what it seemed like.
Refugees, refugees,
refugees like escaping wars, and that's how chaotic it looked.
You haven't been traveling in mainland China in 1980s, man. I have rode trains in 1980s. It was a different world, I tell you. But
so 2005 was advanced for your
way more civilized than 1985. Let me tell you.
So I mean,
back in 1980s when I was just trying to catch a bus in Chongqing downtown, when the bus come, everybody rushed the bus and you'll have people try to climb through the window. And that's how bad it was. Like me and my mom, there's no way we could get on the bus because we can't compete with those like 20-year-old guys trying to climb through the window of the bus. But yeah, that's gone now. That means so China today is so much different.
Because I mean, the DPP, there's so much disinformation. Like I was on TikTok the other day. I saw one of their so there's three there's Formosa TV, FTV 民视. There is Sanli, which is I think SCTN, and there is the Liberty Times 自由时报. Together we call them 三明治. Yeah, the pro DPP media. I saw a TikTok. They were posting videos like Taiwan's trains versus China's trains, and like the for the China's train, it was obvious they used footage from like when Mao Zedong was still alive. And I'm just like, and some people believe that. The people who've traveled to the mainland, know that it's a bunch of bullshit. Now there's another type of person, which is they've gone to the mainland, they've done business on the mainland, they felt screwed over, so then now they got a bone to pick. And they realize there's a lot of money to be made in smearing the Chinese mainland. See,
that's also like the same in the English language media, by the way, on YouTube. You have a lot of these people who used to be, when they lived in China, I'm not gonna name names, when they lived in China, they are singing the praises, or everything is so good.
Laowai 86.
I'm not trying to name names. I'm not gonna give anybody a Streisand effect. Sorry. And when they travel to back to US, suddenly they realize, what really makes money to sell Americans what they like to hear, which is China bad. This is why my channel doesn't get nearly as many views as those guys. They will get hundreds of thousands of views per video.
The tides are shifting, though. I feel like, for someone who is this vocally like pro reunification and friendly with the CPC, if someone like me were to like change sides and be like, I'm pro Taiwan separatist now, I am pro DPP, this would be a huge propaganda victory for them, because they'd be like, oh, somebody who used to be on their side saw how bad they were and had a change of heart, whatever. That's like the case of Minanlang. So, but then it's like, it's not within my conscience to do something like that. But some people who are more opportunistic, they'll take that opportunity. But I think even if I were to do that now, just with the whole tide shifting, it would be like cutting my nuts off back in 1911 to become a eunuch, only for the Qing Empire to fall. And then you're there.
Join the KMT in 1949.
If joining the KMT in 1940, you wouldn't have enough time to rise high in the ranks to really have power. After 1949, if you were like within Chiang Kai-shek's little circle, you lived a pretty good life, even after you came to Taiwan.
If you're Chiang Kai-shek's little circle, you'll be all set. Let me turn on the lights because it's getting dark over here. 1 second. Okay, go on.
So the tides definitely are shifting. I don't want to say people in Taiwan, this vote against the recall wasn't necessarily a vote like pro reunification or pro China, but it is a vote against increased antagonism against the mainland, and a vote against the DPP's methods of trying to consolidate power that they failed to win.
Yeah, I mean, because for people who not familiar with Taiwan, again, DPP, they are main tools for staying in power is sowing division. By sowing division, like creating this division between, say, the people who lived in Taiwan for a long time versus the families who travel with KMT to Taiwan after 1949, and then also to create the tension between Taiwan and China, and the fearmongering, especially during 2019, the Hong Kong protest time. One of their main slogan is like, "Oh, see, one country, two systems. This will make us like Hong Kong. This is this. So vote for us. We'll make sure we'll stay away from mainland China. But
the
they
DPP once had a pro-reunification faction.
Really?
Wow. You know why it's called 民主进步党?
No.
The 进步 part, the progressive part, is a nod to the 进步党 on the Chinese mainland back during the Sun Yat-sen era.
Wow. Okay, I did not
know that.
One
of the guys behind that was Lin Zhengjie. Now, he left the party in the 90s because he did not like the way that the party was headed towards a separatist direction. And part of that was because when the DPP was formed, its political goals were, we want to end martial law, we want to have liberal democracy, we want to have freedom of press, and the ban on oppositional newspapers. All of their goals were accomplished much sooner than they expected. So then it's like, okay, now it's liberalized. Li Denghui's in charge of the KMT. They're a liberal party too. How do we set ourselves apart from the KMT? Oh, I know. Identity politics. And but we local Taiwanese are in the majority. If we can stir hatred against these families that came from the mainland later, then make it us versus them, then we have the numbers.
Yeah,
that's kind of
I mean, unfortunately, that's how a lot of liberal democracy plays out, because sowing division is the best. Divisive politics is kind of the easiest path to power. So anyway, so it looks like
before we leave, I do want to mention that's why I think the TPP, even though they only have 8 seats in the legislature, are in a sense something new in Taiwan, because within this party you have a huge chunk of the party that's former DPP. A lot of them aren't ready to identify or re-identify as Chinese or promote reunification. But there's other people in the party that identify as Chinese that are, pro reunification, but they're able to sit down together and say, look, these are the issues at hand. We have more in common than we have disagreements. Reunification, separatism, that's not going to happen today or tomorrow. We need to work on what's real first. They're a party that's able to do that internally. I can't go to the DPP and say, hey, 我是中国人, I'm Chinese. And even the KMT is kind of afraid to call themselves Chinese now, even though that's in their name. The Chinese name of the party is 中国国民党, the Chinese KMT. It's interesting times.
Because the overtime window has been shifted, right? But
it's been broken now. It's like I don't even know what it is now. It's just all under heaven is under chaos. Everything, the situation is great.
Well, I think that's a good point to wrap it up. Thank you, Xiangyu, for coming to the show to explain the intricacy of Taiwan politics to us. And what if people want to follow you? Where do they go?
You can follow me on X. My handle is not Xiangyu, NOTXIANGYU. And if you click on the link in the bio, it goes to my personal website. On the personal website, on the navigation bar, if you click on the little 3 dots, you get all the links to my other socials. On YouTube, I have a show called Straight Talk with Xiangyu, like I mentioned earlier. And I try to update it twice a month, like around once every 2 weeks. And Carl, you should come back on the show at some point. We can figure out a topic to talk about.
Sure. You were supposed to finish that that Korean War series with me. It's only been like 3 years.
Yeah, no,
no worries.
Yeah, that's true. Well, at some point, it's hey, Dr. Dre's detox was like announced for like over a decade before he was like, oh, yeah, I'm not doing it anymore.
Well, thank you again for coming, and people should go check out Zong Xiangyu's channel. He has some excellent rap videos posted there, and check out his Straight Talk, and check out his X post. Although nowadays I feel like you just go X to pick fight with people.
Not really. Do I? Let me look at my. I think
you follow out a little bit. Okay.
No, it's pretty. I think it's pretty tame.
Okay. All right. Follow Xiangyu nevertheless. It's
I'll just. I mean, sometimes I'll go on and make fun of Drew Pavlu, but that's about it.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. Follow him. I'm the one to talk. I'm a prolific shit poster on X. So, all right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time. Bye bye.